On the day of my deepest grief, you threw me out, not knowing the door you slammed shut didn't separate you from a wife you abandoned, but from a $2.5 billion empire. Imani always believed her marriage was a sacred tree, its roots running deep into the soil of tradition. Her grandmother, the family matriarch whose eyes had witnessed decades of change, would always advise her over evening tea. Never give the shade of your bow bat to someone unwilling to sit beneath it with you during a drought. But Imani was convinced her husband, David, was different. She thought he was her strongest branch. To outsiders, they were the perfect couple. David, tall and charismatic, with a voice that could command a boardroom or melt a heart. His ambitions were as tall as the sky, scrapers he dreamed of building. Imani was his opposite, quiet as a deep river, a historical researcher whose soul lived in ancestral stories and the scent of her homeland. But it was Imani who, with her modest savings, helped David start his construction company when banks wouldn't even give him the time of day. It was she who reviewed his accounts late into the night, found investors through her university connections, and prepared his dinner when he came home smelling of expensive cologne and someone else. As promises, David never said thank you, but Imani told herself that love didn't need gratitude, only faith. That faith, however, began to crack when his company fell into crisis. David grew increasingly irritable and distant. He started mocking her passions. Imani, who needs those old stories? We live in the 21st century. We need to make money, not sift through musty old papers. One evening he sat beside her, his face etched with desperation. Darling, we're on the verge of bankruptcy and need one last push. A large sum to save everything. We need to sell the house. Imani's shirt sank. That house was their nest, a place where every object held a memory. But looking into his pleading eyes, she gave in. Okay, she whispered. For us. 2 weeks after the money from the house sale landed in his account, devastating news arrived. Her beloved grandmother had passed away. Heartbroken, Imani traveled to her home village for the funeral. When she returned, her eyes swollen and her body weary with grief, David met her at the door. His bags were packed. Standing beside him was Ian, provocatively dressed woman, his new designer. Imani, I can't do this anymore, he said in a cold, business-like tone. You're too stuck in the past. In your traditions, we're different people. I've met someone who looks to the future, not the past. He handed her a cardboard box with her belongings and an old, yellowed document. And this, he sneered, is a parting gift from your granny, a worthless piece of land in the middle of now. Here, you can build a hut there and tell your stories. He slammed the door in her face, leaving her on the street without a home, without a husband, with only a broken heart and an unwanted deed to a piece of land. The next few weeks were a blur for Imani. She stayed at a friend's apartment. Her entire world collapsed. She felt an emptiness she had never known. All she had left were memories and that deed, which she held onto as the last link to her roots. One day, her phone rang, an unfamiliar number with a foreign country code. Is this Miss Imani? My name is Mr. Harrison. a lawyer for an international mining corporation. We'd like to discuss the plot of land you've inherited. Imani thought it was some kind of scam. Are you talking about that barren plot in the province? It's worthless. There was a pause on the other end of the line. And then Mr. Harrison spoke the words that changed everything. Ma'am, our geologists have conducted satellite surveys. That barren plot is situated on one of the world's largest deposits of high-grade cobalt. Its estimated value is approximately $2.5 billion. Imani dropped the phone. The world stopped spinning. Her tears of despair turned into tears of shock. And finally they forged a cold, steely resolve. Meanwhile, David and his mistress were living a life of luxury. They bought an expensive sports car, and traveled extensively, flaunting it all on social media. But the money from the house sale ran out quickly, and his company, without Imani's steady support, completely collapsed. Suppliers came knocking for payments, and investors pulled their funds. But Imani was making her own moves. Quietly, she hired the best legal team, negotiated, and signed the deal of the century. She didn't to buy yachts or villas. Instead, she established a charitable foundation named Grandmother's Legacy, dedicated to supporting women's education and preserving cultural traditions in her home country. The news of a Cinderella from now here who became a billionaire philanthropist spread rapidly across the globe. Her photos graced the covers of Forbes and Time. She spoke at summits, talking about the power of roots and the importance of heritage. David saw her on TV while sitting in a rented room, cluttered with unpaid bills. His mistress was long gone. He watched the radiant, confident Imani, unable to believe his eyes. That worthless piece of land. Desperation and greed consumed him. He found her at a charity gala she was hosting. He approached her, trying to feign remorse. Imani, Imad, a terrible mistake. I was blind. I've lost everything. I've lost you. Imani looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt nothing, no pain, not even anger, just a faint sense of disgust. What do you want, David? His face twisted with greed. That land was inherited while we were married. By law, I'm entitled to half. I deserve it. You deserve it? Her voice was soft, yet sharp as glass. When I gave you my savings to start your business, was that ours? When I stayed up all night fixing your mistakes to save your reputation, was that ours? No, that was mine. She took a step closer. You tricked me into selling our home under false pretenses and threw me out on the darkest day of my life. My lawyers call that fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Any court would find that from the moment you slammed that door in my face, you forfeited any right to anything associated with me and my family. Tears of desperation and anger welled in his eyes. But I have nothing. Help me for old time's sake. Imani looked one last time at the man she once loved. You said it yourself, David. I'm a woman stuck in the past, and the past should be left behind. She turned and walked away. leaving him alone in the middle of the hall, surrounded by the scornful gazes of others. She returned to her heritage, to her future, and he was left with nothing but the bitter realization that he hadn't just lost a wife. He had thrown an empire in the trash because he could see the treasure lying right at his feet.